of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. Let the record show that all members of the City Council are present this evening, with the exception of Councilman Fralin. A copy of the Open Meetings Act is posted in the meeting room and is accessible to members of the public at any time during the course of this meeting. First item on the agenda is the consent agenda. All items under the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests. First item is item A, approve agenda as submitted. B, receive and place on file all notices pertaining to this meeting. C, receive and place on file all materials having any bearing on this meeting. D, approval of minutes of the regular meeting on December 6, 2021 as on file in the city clerk's office. E, approval of minutes of work session meeting on November 22, 2021 as on file in the city clerk's office. F, approval of treasurer's report of claims in the amount of $1,552,463.55. G, approval of Boswell report of claims in the amount of $52,412.63. H, resolution number 6817, executing the agreement for professional services outlining the scope of services and project schedule for fiscal year 2022 for the city's MS4 Compliance Assistance Services as recommended by the Board of Public Works. I, resolution number 6818, executing the agreement renewal to maintenance agreement number 4 with the Nebraska Department of Transportation for the period of January 1st, 2022 to December 31st, 2022. And item J, resolution number 6819, executing the excess stop loss agreement with QBE Insurance Corporation and any and all other contracts, documents, exhibits, and memoranda necessary for the city's self-funded employee health plan. Is there any item that any member of the council wants removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none, Mr. Claybaugh?
I move that the items listed under the consent agenda be approved, accepted, and are ratified as presented.
Second.
Moved by Claybaugh, seconded by Morgan, that all items listed under the consent agenda be approved and ratified. Your vote, please. And that is approved 7-0. We have no public hearings or bids. Next is item 4, resolution number 6820, executing the Community Development Block Grant Agreement number 21-H0-36035 with the Nebraska Department of Economic Development to accept grant funding in the amount of $540,000 to implement a program for housing rehabilitation improvements.
I move that resolution number 6820 be passed and adopted.
Second.
Moved by Claybaugh, seconded by Morgan, that resolution number 6820 be passed and adopted. Tobias?
This is our owner-occupied housing rehab grant that we applied for with the state of Nebraska. We received $547,000 from the state to implement this project. $20,000 of that go to CDBG administration, which later you have a contract proposal with SEND to handle that one. There's some construction management that's in there as well. That kind of the next step after you approve this agreement tonight, you'll see we have guidelines coming up and committees being formed and those type of things. Then we'll start working through the process of contacting those who have pre-applied, make sure they're still interested in the grant. We have to verify income levels. We have to go through and inspect houses to see what would qualify. There's a limit of $24,999 that can be spent on each household. Obviously, some different federal rules kick in at $25,000, so that's why we cap it at $24,999. But that's kind of the next steps. All of this has to be completed by May of 2024.
Rich?
On the house inspections, will that be our inspections or our, whatever you call it?
Community Development Department?
No, it'll actually be an outside inspector. SEND has their own inspector on staff. They'll come down and do those inspections.
We don't have to pay them, they're paid out of a different fund?
They're all part of the grant process.
Okay.
Is it limited to the pre-applications also, like the downtown?
We're going to start with the pre-applications again and see if we can, how many of those we can help. And then if we run out of people there or don't have enough projects wherever else, you may see us have a second round
How
of
many
applications.
pre-applications do we have?
Again, about 50 of them
Okay,
is
so
what
you
we
have
had.
quite a few, okay.
Any other questions from the council? From the audience? And your vote, please. And that is approved 7-0. Resolution number 6820 has been passed and adopted. Next is item B, resolution number 6821, adopting the owner-occupied housing rehabilitation program guidance and guidelines and program income reuse plan.
I move that resolution number 6821 be passed and adopted.
Second.
By Claybaugh, seconded by Morgan, that resolution 6821 be passed and adopted.
So these are the first forms that the state sent down to us to have approved by this body as part of this grant process. Guidelines were written by the state, but if you read through there, it forms the Beatrice Housing Advisory Committee. And the next resolution you have, we'll look to put members on that committee, but they're the ones who are going to first review the applications with the help of SIND, go through those again, verifying income levels, verifying the houses that are inspected, make sure which improvements need to be made, which can be made. Code deficiencies, they're looking for structural elements, obviously basement walls, that kind of stuff. Furnaces, water heaters, plumbing, electrical, all those are eligible type improvements. Somebody who simply wants to remodel their bathroom to make it look nicer, it's not going to be an eligible expense. If they need to remodel to make it ADA compliant, then that starts to become eligible. And so those will be the things that this committee starts going through, making sure we have applicants that qualify, and then again, bring them back to this body for final approval.
Questions from the audience? You want to come up and state your name, address, please?
Hal Mason, 1300 Lincoln Street. You were talking about the proposal ending in 2024, the grant money.
Correct.
What's the length of the process of being approved and going through all that? Do you need to be approved before you get the funds?
Yes.
Or how does that work?
Yes, you're going to want to make sure that you've gotten a notice of approval or notice to proceed from either SIND or from the city of Beatrice before you start expending money. If you do it beforehand, it's very likely that your project will be ineligible and you'll not be receiving any funding. How long it takes to go through all those steps, not entirely sure. Some of those require environmental reviews, which require a minimum of 30 days. Hopefully, we can start having money be approved and awarded by yet this spring or summer. However, SIND did warn me that some communities have been up to a year before they've been able to get money allocated back out to individuals, just due to some of the process taking a while. Some of that will be on the community or the applicants as well. If they're not quick in getting information back, if I ask to verify income and you take 6 weeks to get me back some verification, obviously it holds the project up. And so those will be things we have to work through and make sure we educate applicants as we go forward and work with them to hopefully get money out faster rather than slower.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, your vote, please. And that is approved 7-0. Resolution 6821 has been passed and adopted. Next is resolution number 6822, appointing Susan Lotman, James Franz, Greg Zarbadinsky, Rob Merrow, and Tobias Templemeyer to the Beatrice Housing Advisory Committee.
I move that resolution number 6822 be passed and adopted.
Second.
Moved by Claybaugh, seconded by Billsbach, that resolution number 6822 be passed and adopted. Tobias, anything else?
Yeah, so on this committee, you see, first off, you got a couple city employees on there, one being Rob Merrow. He's obviously your community development director. Otherwise, most people call him a building inspector. Recommended putting him on this committee. He sees a lot of these houses. He's been into a lot of them. He has very much a knowledge about types of housing and the stock that we have here in town. So that's why we think he's going to be valuable on that. Although we do know that SIN will be providing the housing inspections, it's always good to have another set of eyes looking at houses as well. As far as myself goes, I'm on there largely just kind of manage things, make sure paperwork gets sent out. You need somebody to act as secretary of the committee, make sure appointments are scheduled, meetings are scheduled, all those things. Largely my role in those type of this type of committee. And then the three other individuals are people who have expressed interest in helping the community one way or another. And so we reached out to them to see if they'd be interested in serving on this committee.
Questions from the audience? Your vote, please. That is approved 7-0. Resolution 6822 has been passed and adopted. Next is item D, resolution number 6823, executing the professional service agreement with the Southeast Nebraska Development District to retain SIND as the CDBG administrator for the CDBG agreement number 21-H0. 2023-36035.
I move that resolution number 6823 be passed and adopted.
Second.
By Claybaugh, seconded by McLean. That ordinance, I beg your pardon, resolution number 6823 be passed and adopted.
Again, any CDBG grant requires a CDBG administrator. I am a certified administrator, however, I've never done an owner-occupied grant before, and so felt it would be best to go out and hire professionals who have done this before, and that's where SIN steps in and able to do that. Their contract calls for $20,000. The grant you receive calls for administration fees of $20,000, and so that's where their funds will come from. Other than that, we'll rely on SIN to help us kind of navigate the waters of this type of grant.
Comments? Questions? Anyone from the audience? And your vote, please. And that is approved 7-0. Resolution 6823 has been passed and adopted. Next is item E, resolution number 6824, executing a loan agreement, promissory note, deed of trust, personal guarantee, and related documents between the city and Envision Landscapes LLC and Alex L. Eckhoff for the economic development loan totaling $150,000 from funds derived from LB 840 funds.
I move that resolution number 6824 be passed and adopted.
Second.
Moved by Claybaugh, seconded by McLean, that resolution 6824 be passed and adopted. Tobias?
What you have before you tonight is a loan agreement with Envision Landscapes and Alex Eckhoff for $150,000. It calls for a repayment schedule over 10 years. The way the payment plans are set up, he makes smaller payments in January, February, March, and then larger payments the rest of the year. At the end of this, there's a balloon payment of roughly about $50,000 in year 10, based upon the size of the payments during the course of the amortization schedule. 3% interest. Those are kind of the terms that's being presented to you tonight. You do see we have a deed of trust is what we're proposing as collateral. That would both be on the building that he's buying in as personal residence. It's also a promissory note and a personal guarantee by Alex himself. And Alex and Kelsey are here if they want to come up and answer any questions you might have about the business or tell you what they're looking to do.
Why don't you come on up, Alex?
I might have her come up with me.
Sure, absolutely.
See the numbers, yeah.
Come on up, Kelsey. Just for the record, please, your name and your address, please.
Alex Eckhoff, 1313 North 13th.
And Kelsey DeKoning, 2010 Country Club.
Questions, gentlemen, from Alex or Kelsey? Gary?
Not a question, a comment. Alex invited, I suppose, all of us to come look at his building. I took him up on it. I spent about 45 minutes, didn't we, going through the building. He told us all of his plans, and he gave me permission to ask Kelsey, which I called her, and I just think this is a good project, and I think it'll pick up maybe a little bit on the east end of town, hopefully.
And occupy another building.
Right, and I'm going to, I'll vote for this.
Anyone else?
Alex, you're working on the building now?
Yes.
I see the vehicles there. So when do you think that you'll have that completed? When do you know that?
It's well, just like everything else, shipping, materials, everything like that. It's going to be longer than what we thought, but I hope to have my shop and everything done, come spring. And then the front area, whether I'm going to occupy that front area of that building or another business, that'll be done come spring as well. The nursery is going to be the biggest thing.
Right.
That might be more of a fall thing. I don't want to rush into too much and try to do too many things at once. So it's just going to kind of depend on that and material and then weather as well. So, but hopefully, the building should be done come this spring.
Yeah.
So
Is it what you thought it would be when you got in there?
yeah, there's a lot of work to be done in there. Gary was there with me. I don't know, that was Earl May when, since my lifetime here, but I guess it's been a hardware store, a whole bunch of other stuff. It needs to be gutted. It hasn't been gutted. There's still wallpaper on there from when it was a daycare. There's just gonna do it right, what needs to be done to the building, so.
Well, I'd just like to tell the council, there's not a lot of people in Alex's age group that are willing to make an investment here and stay in our community, and kudos. I'm glad you're here. Glad you're doing it.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Any other questions?
Nope, good luck.
Thank you.
How many employees do you have right now, and how many do you expect to add once
So-
you get going?
So right now we have about 5, full-time employees, and then, I don't know, 8 part-time. This summer I had up to 20 working for me. So it's just one of those things, well, and with the nursery too, there's going to be more full-time employees because I'm going to have people water, all that. So I plan to add, I would say, 2 to 3 a year if I can. And then if Christmas lights keeps taking off like it is, and I keep getting older, I'm going to need somebody to get up on the roofs and everything too. So that's just kind of the goal.
We're looking forward for you being on the east side. That really completes the east side there, so thanks for doing this.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Any other questions from the council? Alex, Kelsey, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming. Anyone from the audience? All right, your vote, please. And that is approved 7-0. Resolution 6824 has been passed and adopted. Congratulations, Alex. Next, resolution number 6825, adopting the public internet use policy.
I move that resolution number 6825 be passed and adopted.
Second.
Moved by Claybaugh, seconded by Billsbach, that resolution 6825 be passed and adopted. Tobias?
So we've been going through cleaning up the policies at the library, getting those ready to be reviewed by this body. And one of them in there, they had a internet use policy, and we thought it would be best if that was actually went citywide rather than just at the library. And so that's kind of why we pulled that policy out, brought it back before this body. What this policy basically says is that, if a public user logs on the city Wi-Fi, the city can't help the stuff that's on the internet. We can't help the contents of the internet. The city obviously may block or suspend or terminate anybody's use on those anytime, depending on what's going on. If you have small children and your child's on the internet, it's up to the parent to monitor what the kid's getting access to. It's not the city's responsibility to monitor what your kid's having access to. That's what our internet use policy here states. That's what we're proposing you pass tonight.
Questions from the audience? All right, your vote, please. That is approved 7-0. Resolution 6825 has been passed and adopted. Next is resolution number 6826, executing an agreement for professional services between the city and JEO Consulting Group Incorporated to conduct a drainage study of the Beatrice Industrial Park.
I move that resolution number 6826 be passed and adopted.
Moved by Claybaugh, seconded by Morgan, that resolution 6826 be passed and adopted.
So what we're proposing here is that we retain JEO to do a drainage study up in the industrial park area. As anybody will recall, since the city of Beatrice is over 10,000 people, we are an MS4 community. Basically has to do with stormwater. We have to monitor it. We have to make sure that we're taking steps to reduce the quantity of stormwater and increase the quality of stormwater that leaves our community. And so oftentimes what we do is we look at these drainage basins and we look for ways that you can detain stormwater runoff. What you're looking at is pre-development and post-development runoff. The post-development runoff cannot be greater than the pre-development runoff. And so as you start to add roofs and concrete parking lots and those types of things, the amount of runoff starts to increase. One way to handle those is you put in detention cells at each individual location. If you guys want to know what a detention cell is, go out to the hospital and you'll see a detention cell out there, right? It's kind of a depression, a grassy depression that's empty or dry most of the time. You get a big rain, it fills up, it holds the water, and then slowly sends that water downstream into the rest of our stormwater system. In the industrial park, we just don't think it's feasible to move forward having individual drainage basins on each one of these properties. So what we've kind of looked at is more of a regional model. And so we do have one pond up in the industrial park already. We've kind of had serve as a detention pond. There may very well need to be a second one down in the far southern portion of that colored area there. City owns that piece of property. It starts to get into the flood fringe area. And that's what we were asking JEO to do the study and see, one, do you need a stormwater pond down there? And if so, how big does it need to be? And can it fit in that location? The nice part about stormwater ponds or drainage detention ponds is you can start to build them in phases as you need them. You enlarge them as more businesses come in. I'll tell you, the city's working to fill the rest of this industrial park up. That's what we'd like to do. I'd like to get additional employers out there and bring more jobs to the community. And so we see this as a need moving forward. So that's why we're proposing that we retain JEO for the study. The cost is $18,750. We propose to pay for it out of LBA 40 funds.
How much was that again, Todd?
$18,750.
We should have been doing this.
And I stepped on him. The money's coming out of LB $840. Okay.
Yeah. But I had
Questions? Ted?
No, I was just having a conversation with Rick here. This is important. It seems like it's kind of a something that we just do, or you're just spending money for it, but it's not. I mean, you look at the area that Rick and I represent. Had we done this east and north of our area, we wouldn't have the problems that we're having today, and it's really hard to fix now. So.
Yep. Anyone from the audience? All right, your vote, please. That is approved 7-0. Resolution 6826 has been passed and adopted. Next is an ordinance creating paving district number 497 in the city of Beatrice, Nebraska, providing for the grading, curbing, and paving, including all necessary storm sewers and/or drainage structures of the alley between 10th Street on the west and 11th Street on the east, and Arthur Street on the north and Garfield Street on the south.
I move that said ordinance be given number 21-57. The title thereof be approved, the rules be suspended, said ordinance be read by number only 3 times tonight.
Second.
Moved by Claybaugh, second by Billsbach, that the ordinance be given number 21-57, the title thereof approved, the rules suspended, and the ordinance be read by number only 3 times tonight. Motion to suspend the rules is not debatable. Your vote, please. That is approved 7-0. Ordinance number 21-57 by number the first time, ordinance number 21-57 by number the second time, and ordinance number 21-57 by number the third and final time.
I move that ordinance number 21-57 be passed and approved.
Second.
By Claybaugh, seconded by Billsbach, that ordinance number 21-57 be passed and approved. Tobias?
So we were up in the area by the old hospital that was demolished here recently for Excel Development's housing project. The property owners, a couple of the property owners on the south of that lot there, again, between 10th and 11th, Garfield and Arthur, approached the city. And man, we started having conversations probably 3 years ago even about them wanting to pave this alley, asking what the options were, laid out what those options were for them, between doing it themselves, having the city do it, different ways to pay for it. And then they went around and spoke to all of the property owners that would be impacted by this, and all of them signed a piece of paper asking the city to move forward with the paving district to pave the alleyway through there. And so that's why we're coming before you tonight, having you form the paving district. It's about 200 feet of an alleyway. The first 100 feet was paved already back when the hospital had their parking lot there. So the north 100 feet still paved. It's the south 200 feet that we look to put down with asphalt. We've got a mill and overlay project going out for bid here shortly, and so we look to tag on to that mill and overlay project at the same time, to hopefully get some better pricing for them. We'll also look to do Prairie Avenue, which is another paving district that you guys have formed. We'll put that project on that same bid letting. So assuming you guys approve it tonight, we then advertise it. Property owners have the right to come in and protest. If more than 51% protest, obviously it's dead. If less than that protest, we move forward, and then we'll look to pave it this spring or summer.
At this point, it's 100% approval rating, isn't it?
At this point, we've had 100% of the property owners sign off on this project.
Any questions from the audience? And your vote, please. That is approved 7-0. Ordinance number 21-57 has been passed and approved. Next is a public forum. The purpose of the public forum is for the presentation of an item by the general public to the City Council for consideration at a later date. No discussion or action will be taken by the City Council at this time. Anyone here for the public forum? Seeing none, we'll go into the City Administrator's monthly report. Tobias?
Yeah, a couple of highlights for you. One, I'm sure everybody knows by now, but the fire department has moved down into the new station. As anybody who has lived in a house for 40, 50 years understands that you've accumulated a little bit amount of stuff. And so they're still working on getting all of the stuff out of the city auditorium. I think they're learning there's some stuff that may just stay there and not be needed at the new place. And so they're working through that process, but things are going well down at the new station for them. Another thing that's out there is our Civic Ready notification software. We've got that out in the BPW flyers. The people got that. I think we've started pushing out through our social media, but that's a way that people can sign up and get notifications from the city. One that's coming up is obviously trash. Friday's a holiday, so when's my trash gonna be picked up? If you signed up, they'll send you a notification, letting you know when those things are going to occur. So you can stay ahead of those. You can sign up for utility billing dates, and so you can be made aware of those. Or last week when the storm came through, you could have gotten updates. They started pushing updates through that system already last week. So it's just another way to try to get information out to public, but you got to sign up for it. And so we encourage you to go on our website, and you can sign up online that way. We've talked about Lincoln Street and that corridor. We did an RFQ. We received 2 responses back. So we're going to look to do interviews on those 2 respondents next week, and then come back before this board with a recommendation in January as to which firm to retain to start that process. And then it'll be another 4 to 6 months as they work through theirs, getting public input, having those meetings before we come back with a proposal, again, late summer, early fall next year on that project. We've talked a lot about our SRF funding. For the water department, we were able to close on the land for the new well field up that is northwest of the town. So that was completed this last week, and so we are owners of that one. We're now working through farming practices, make sure we put the right farming practices on that parcel of ground to make sure the nitrate levels stay low as we move forward. And once we get that done, we'll look to go out to bids for a tenant, and then again bring that before this body for approval if that's the direction that we go. Or I know we talked to CRP property. So the different options we're looking at that are out there. And then lastly, I would just like to take a moment and say thank you to all the city staff last week when that storm came through. Between the election department obviously out doing their work, dispatchers, if nobody has sat through the dispatch at a time when it hits the fan, it's interesting. Just the sheer volume of calls that they get, the type of calls they get, the fact they still remain professional during getting those calls, and it's very good. That's why they answer the phone, not me. But they did a wonderful job. I know as soon as it did, Chief put the call out and dispatchers off work came in, no questions asked. Street department came in that night to start pushing limbs off the streets to make sure they stayed open. Obviously, you had police officers and firefighters working their normal calls, plus whatever else came in. When it first hit, we lost phones at City Hall, which pushed everything over to the police department, and so they were getting bombarded. Our IT guys did a great job getting phones back up at the service center. We had volunteers at City Hall go out and man phones at the service center until 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, taking phone calls, trying to take some of that call volume off. So everybody stepped up, did a wonderful job. But especially I want to thank the electric department. I mean, it was cold that night, and it was not very nice weather. And when I went and saw them at 13th and Monroe Street to bring them some food, it was not pleasant. I can't imagine being up in the bucket and that wind as it was moving. And so I just want to say thank you to those guys.
Tobias, would you like to tell them the number of people were out and how fast they got it back? That's what amazed me.
Yeah, so at the high point, we had about 930 people that were without power. The amazing portion is, if you guys remember, we put an AMI system in here a couple years ago, about 4 years ago. We know your power's out before you know your power's out. We get a response, we get a call right away to our system that tells us that your meter is now without power. And so Pat Fleiss and the guys can sit down and look at that and start figuring out what's going on. How come this patch of people are out? They know right a line, it's this substation or this feeder line or whatever else. And so they're able to pinpoint those pretty quickly and working them that way. By the time the guys went home at about 3:30 in the morning, they had gotten it down to a couple hundred people that were out. And then by the next morning, they'd gotten everybody back on that next day before they went home the second day. And so, within 24 hours, they had everybody back on. What happened that night is you had a large tree that hit a power line there at about 13th and Monroe area and basically tore down everything off the power lines for about 2 blocks.
And the power poles.
Yeah, it was a pretty bad scene there if you pulled up on, but again, those guys did a wonderful job.
Any questions of Tobias? All right. Our next regular scheduled meeting is going to be on January 3rd, right after the new year. and may or may not have a work session, depending upon how many councilmen are going to be able to be present. With that, Mr. Claybaugh, I would entertain a motion that we go into executive session.
I move that Beatrice City Council go into closed session at 7:30 PM for the protection of public interest to discuss real estate.
Moved by Claybaugh, seconded by Billsbach, that we go into executive session at 7:30 for the protection of public interest. Your vote, please. That is approved 7-0.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everyone.